Chromosomes. Little strands of nucleic acids and proteins are the fundamental genetic instructions that tell us who we are at birth. Most people are born with 46 chromosomes, but each year in the United States, about 6,000 people are born with an extra chromosome, making them a person with Down syndrome. If you've ever encountered someone with Down syndrome, you know that they are some of the kindest, most joyful people you will ever meet. They truly have something extra. My name is Lisa Nichols, and I have spent the last 24 years as both the CEO of Technology Partners and as the mother to Allie. Allie has something extra in every sense of the word. I have been blessed to be by her side as she impacts everyone she meets. Through these two important roles as CEO and mother to Allie, I have witnessed countless life lessons that have fundamentally changed the way I look at the world. While you may not have an extra chromosome, every leader has something extra that defines who you are. Join me as I explore the something extra in leaders from all walks of life and discover how that difference in each of them has made a difference in their companies, their families, their communities, and in themselves. If you like this episode today, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star rating. I'm thrilled to have Kim Houlne on the show today. Kim is the founder and president of Working Solutions. Well, Kim, I am so delighted that you have made the time to be on the Something Extra podcast today. Thank you so much for being my guest and joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. I can't wait. This is going to be exciting.
We're going to have fun. I know that. And, I always like to go back, Kim, and, because connections happen different ways, right? And I want our guests to always understand, well, how do you get these people? How do you find your guests? And you and I just connected through LinkedIn. I think one of your staff members reached out to me and said, hey, based on what I've read about you and what I've read about Kim, I think you two should meet and maybe Kim could be a guest on your podcast. And so you and I had our first conversation and I'm literally sitting there going, am I talking to myself? Because
it was crazy, the similarities, amazing similarities. And I can't wait to tell everybody as we kind of get going in our conversation, but it is like you have a doppelganger out there in life, right? And there you sit, but you're absolutely right. Connected through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And made it work.
We made it work. Yes. And so you guys, your company's Working Solutions and you and your husband, Tim, now it's Greg and Lisa, but it's Kim and Tim. So our names don't rhyme, but we started our company together. You guys did too. Now recently, I don't know how many years ago, but Tim broke off and he is now the CEO for Houlne, which is a very large business processing outsourcing organization that's doing great things. Mm-hmm. But your company's 27 years old. Mm-hmm. Our company will be 29 years old next week.
We're dating ourselves.
We're dating ourselves, but we're still, we started when we were 12. Okay.
That's right.
So everybody knows. But you started your career in corporate America, and we'll talk about some of the brands that you've worked for, Kim. We did too. McDonnell Douglas, Ceridian, MasterCard. Some of that's in our background. You're in staffing. You're staffing sales agents, customer service reps. We're staffing IT professionals. So a little bit different there, but we are still in staffing. You have 2 boys that are 25 and 26, Nick and Jack. And we have 3 kids, Jordan, Paige, and Allie, that are 28, 29, 30. And you and I both had a really good chuckle about this because right now, not one of our kids want to go into the business.
None, neither. I should say neither. We don't even talk about it. It's crazy.
Right. And you and I had a good chuckle about it. I think that, I know for our kids, I think we burned them out. They saw how hard we worked and they're like, don't want any part of that. Probably talked about business way too much when they were growing up, but we had a good chuckle about that. But for those of you who own businesses together, just watch out for that. Don't talk business too much with your kids, but let's talk a little bit about growing up because you're in Dallas. Your company's headquartered in Dallas, but you did not grow up in Dallas. You grew up in Atlanta. So tell me a little bit about growing up.
I did. So yes, I was what you call middle class all the way. I grew up in a suburb of Atlanta and had an amazing childhood. I remember playing outside a lot, like we used to do, right? Before we had
Mhm.
phones. Had a great friend set. I was fortunate enough to kind of, really live and grow up with all the kids. But then when I was a senior in high school, my father told me, or told the family, that he was getting transferred to Nashville. So if you can believe this, I moved my senior year in high school to Nashville. And I thought it was life changing. I happened to have a principal of the school I was at in Atlanta who was going to get his doctorate at Vanderbilt. And he came in and said, you know what? It sounds like it's going to be a tough thing, but I promise you, you're going to love it. He said, it's a new school. There are new kids. It's the best time to go there. And I think really it changed my life because I got to be a much stronger person. I mean, how many 17 and 18-year-olds just jump into a new school after you've created a life with these friends
Mhm.
for so many years? And so it was a wonderful childhood. Now I did go back because I went back to the University of Georgia and got my degree there in communication studies. But just absolutely, I have no complaints, no regrets. I
Mhm.
had a great time, just an amazing childhood.
Tell me,
And it just,
did
yeah,
you have siblings? Did you have siblings,
I
Kim?
do. I have a
Mhm.
younger brother. So he moved obviously the same time that we all did, and he was able to make a really strong friend group in the Nashville area. What's kind of amazing is that we've got a couple of big, reunions coming up. And for me, I'm like, I don't get invited to the school that I probably went to the longest. And so how do you balance that off, versus your newer school? So, it was a really solid family. We just enjoyed each other. We all kind of did different things in life, but I certainly feel like we have a lot of characteristics from how we were raised and who we are today, what makes us a very strong business person. My father was insurance. My mother went back to college really late in life. And that was pretty cool, right? To see her after we grew up. She decided
Inspiring.
she wanted to go back to get her degree. So, yeah, all was good on
That's
that front.
awesome. Well, tell
Very,
me
very.
this, what were your interests when you were growing up? I mean, I love that story that you just told about moving your senior year because, it really forced you to be adaptable, probably, and agile and quickly make friends. And we know that those are all traits in business that are great traits to have, right? But what
That's
were
a
your
great point. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, and you learned that at a young age. But what were what were your interests? Did you ever think, literally, Kim, that one day you would be the CEO of a company?
I did. Can you believe that? I did. I remember, so I worked a lot, right? As soon as I turned 16, I wanted to be working. I wanted to make my own money, buy my own car, buy my own clothes. I didn't want to have anybody. This is probably why I'm a CEO and why I founded a company. I don't like people telling me what to do. So if I felt like I had the means to do it myself, I could make my own decisions. And I just kind of went down that path. I worked a lot when I was a kid, but I was also very much into sports and athletics. I was a swimmer. I was a cheerleader. I played tennis. I loved college football even back then. Love it now. But, all of that stuff is very, engaging for me. And I kept myself very well entertained and worked like crazy. So now as I'm, getting to the latter half of my career, I mean, won't be long, but it will be sometime soon. That, I think, gosh, I've been working since I've been like 14 or 15 years old. I'm sure you have as well. But those are all great things that made me into the person that I am today, made me into the decision maker that I am today, into the leader, into the culture leader of the company. So yeah, those were things that I did, and I spent a lot of time with friends. Back we went shopping, went to the mall. It was a very different. Seems like it was just yesterday, but it's such a different world back in the
Right.
80s
Yes.
than it certainly is today.
Oh,
So
no
I
doubt.
appreciate all that the poor kids have to do and the young adults have to do today, because it has changed dramatically. But I also think for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're a much more advanced country than we were back then, and you even look at the tools and the processes and the different what's accessible to us today certainly wasn't back then, but it is different. It
It
is
is.
different.
Oh, no doubt.
Mhm.
And technology's been a big part of that, right? I mean,
It has been.
even when we started our company, even talking to our younger people in the company, it's like we did not have Monster. We did not have Dice. We barely had the internet, when we started. So, yeah, things have just definitely changed. That's for sure. But Kim, you work for some really big brands, and I've already kind of alluded to that. But before jumping on the entrepreneur wagon, you worked for Mercer,
Mhm.
Mutual of Omaha, Blue
Mhm.
Cross. What were you doing for these organizations, and how did those experiences really inspire you to say, "Hey, I want to do something and hang out my own shingle"? What were those things that really caused you to think, "Oh, I do think I want to jump on the entrepreneur wagon and found working solutions"?
That's all great, and it leads into that last question, or at least from that last question. So, yeah, somehow I got on this insurance track, and I knew that's not the track that I wanted to be on. I didn't know what track was my right track, but I had, dabbled in insurance. I'm like, yeah, this just isn't what I want to be doing longer term. However, one of those companies, Mutual of Omaha, by the way, which is a fabulous company, we were doing some type of leadership training or some type of group compatibility training, something, and they asked everybody to write down how you saw yourself in 5 or 10 years. And I literally wrote down that I wanted to have multiple companies and that I wanted to lead those companies. I don't know why I said that, but it just felt good. Tim and I had dabbled in, we bought a franchise, an auto parts franchise of all things. And, making your own decisions and actually being the maker of your own destiny were super important to me. And I certainly think that those were the beginning traits of, hey, I see myself either working independently or leading a team of people. As a communication studies major, I certainly felt more comfortable leading a team of people. And I think that even when I was in high school, some of the things that I was doing, captain of the swim team, I can't say no to an opportunity to make things more efficient or to make things more pleasurable. And it just kind of it gravitated in that direction. So here I am working for these amazing brands. And I finally just said, I think I'm going to go out and I think I can do this myself. Now, I have to say there was a bit of a little, not a hurdle, but I made those decisions because I was pregnant with my first child, and I was commuting back and forth from Omaha, Nebraska to Seattle, and finally said, this poor baby has more frequent flyer miles than like most of the people in the country right now. We have to have roots somewhere. And I said, I don't think that's going to be in Seattle. There were other business things going on. I think I'm going to do this out of Omaha, Nebraska. And so I did. I said, I'm going to just go it alone. I'm going to try to I was doing product management and marketing development and some analytics. And I said, I think I can do this being what I was doing for Blue Cross of Washington and Alaska, for a lot of different companies and a lot of different people. So I set out and I put some marketing material together. And I don't think we talked about this before, but one of my very first projects was with the city of St. Louis. I
Oh
was
my
selected to
goodness.
go in, and there was a new live, work, and play area that they were trying to study and determine whether or not that was going to be suitable for that area, and what types of stores and what types of people would live there. So I gathered people from all over the city of St. Louis to help me do this market research, and we did it virtually. This was kind of one of the first
Mhm.
virtual projects that was out
What
there.
year was
We
this?
made
What year was this, Kim?
This had to have been
1995?
like 1992 or
Okay.
93-ish.
Okay.
No, I take that back. This was probably closer to 97,
Okay.
97-ish time
Okay.
frame.
Okay.
Yes. So, and I did it, and I put the whole document together, and I presented in front of the city, and they loved it. They thought it, turned out to be exactly what they wanted. And I was thrilled to have created a product that, somebody else was loved and was happy with the end product. Yeah, super, a lot of pride. But then I had to go out and repeat myself. I'm like, I said, what do I do next? How do I get out there? How do I find the next account? what happens next? And so all these types of things go through your mind. And what's happening is that you're becoming an entrepreneur. You're thinking about what the strategy is going to be. How are you going to find clients for the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years? And all those companies, again, just like my upbringing, kind of guided me to exactly where I needed to be. And I'm glad I left and went out on my own, and
Well,
I'm a
look,
bit of a risk taker as well. And it worked out. Yeah,
look at
it
what
worked out.
happened. Look at what happened. I mean,
I
you
know.
guys are now, I think you got I don't know, this number I might be a little bit off here, but 110,000 work from home agents nationwide,
We do.
115 in corporate office, over 100 million in annual revenues. I mean, it is really remarkable, Kim, what you have built. And you built this when the whole virtual thing was not a thing, which I think is really amazing. Kind of like a first to market,
First to
kind of
market.
concept,
Yeah.
right?
It was a little crazy. I was a little crazy at the time. And thank you. And I'm sure you feel the same, right? It's being an entrepreneur and growing a company from really nothing to something. It's a strange feeling because you always still feel like you have nothing. It's like, I call it the depression era mentality. Sometimes it's hard to get out of that thought process. And then when you stop or have somebody as wonderful as you sit down and say, look what you've done. Like, yeah, that is kind of, yeah, that's
What a
pretty good
blessing.
actually.
Yeah.
But you're so into the moment, into the day to day, that you have a hard time sometimes stopping and looking back over
Yes.
27 years to see really what all has happened. And it is an accomplishment, and I'm proud of the team. I'm super proud of myself. I really can't believe it. I still can't believe it. I remember there's one story. I must have been like 5 years into the business. So as an entrepreneur, they'll tell you there are certain thresholds or milestones. Once you reach those milestones, not many people get to reach them. I think it's like $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. And the same thing goes along with the number of years in business. If you can be in business for 5 years or more, you've beat, like, I don't know what the statistic, like more than 85% of the other startup companies out there. But I was, it must have been like 5 years in, and maybe even 4 years. And I was walking my dog, I don't know, 8 o'clock. Tim and I were probably walking the dog 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, my gosh, there are people working at Working Solutions right now, and I'm walking the dog. It's bizarre to know that you have an engine that is working 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got wonderful folks to kind of support that.
Yeah, and I know you would say exactly the same thing. I mean, the thing that I'm most proud of, and the thing that has just really jazzed me in all these years, Kim, are just the amazing people I've met and the relationships and our team. I mean, really, we call it the Technology Partners family. It is like a family, and it's just such a blessing,
And
to.
and I agree. And I think what weighs heavy on my mind right now is that as you grow and scale, can you still maintain that family culture? Because culture is such a big part of who we are and what we do. And and we have done an amazing job at keeping that friendly, caring, and we call it, we have a lot of gritty culture around that. It's just amazing that it stays. But I do believe, and I think you'll agree, it all happens within the people that you select to be on your team. And if they can carry on that legacy or carry on that same culture, that, everything flourishes from the top and kind of trickles down. And I'm glad to see that we're both making a change, doing things a little differently that way.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll take a quick break, and then we've got lots more to talk about here. But something I know we get asked a lot, because there may be some people out there that's thinking about jumping on the entrepreneurial wagon, but we get asked this question a lot about managing risk versus scalability. And here is something that we another similarity, Kim, because we never took on investors, we never took on debt. I mean, we had, we started with a $30,000 home equity loan to fund payroll. And then we really had to control our growth. So we were managing our risk by controlling the growth. And I know you guys did the same thing, but I mean, what would you say to someone who is thinking, oh, but how in the world do you even get started, and there's all kinds of ways, but, how did you manage that risk versus scalability?
Well, you have to definitely be creative, right? I think there is such a fine balance because I'm right there with you. I don't like to overspend and get ahead of our skis, if you will. But I know that you have to spend to keep things moving along. And so to get there, we got very creative. We did. I think back in the day when credit cards would say, "Hey, literally all of our credit cards were maxed." Checks from you find out where you get the money when you don't have funding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now we took funding here in 2020 for the first time in ever, outside of like small bank loans. But you just really have to be very crafty, very creative, but know when you've surpassed your limit, right? Know when it becomes a little out of realm and you have to pull that back in,
Mm-hmm.
or have a solution to get out. So
right. Yeah,
it is.
I know
It's
that you
it's
guys did just pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about that because there may come a period of time, especially with consolidation of companies and things like that, really the owner may want to take some money off the table. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Oh, good.
There may be some people out there that are thinking along those lines, but we do need to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Kim Houlne on the Something Extra podcast.
In business, the tendency is to seek out partners who are bigger, faster, stronger. When it comes to IT, you should be looking for smarter, faster, better. That's just what you'll find with the talented technologists at Technology Partners. Our experts develop custom solutions to tackle your most complex challenges, all to simplify your processes in the smartest, most efficient way possible. The time to be swift and nimble starts now. Go to technologypartners.net/solutions and see what's possible.
So welcome back, everyone, to Something Extra podcast with my friend, Kim Houlne, who is the CEO for Working Solutions. So Kim, I know this is not why you do this, but you've had so many awards as an individual as well as an organization. You personally, you've been recognized by the Dallas Business Journal as one of the most prominent businesswomen. You won a Stevie Award, top 25 women to watch. I mean, you go, girl. That's awesome. But in 2021, Working Solutions was included in the 10 fastest growing contact center companies to watch by CIO Coverage. So I'd love for you to talk more about Working Solutions, the industries that you serve, but the part that I'm really, really interested in is, and I told you on a sidebar conversation, I just laughed at this because during the lockdown, everybody's scrambling, going, oh my goodness, oh, now we got to work from home. But you guys have been doing that since your inception. And I had to chuckle because you said, all I was thinking about is, what do we do with our plants? Who's going to water the plants? How are the plants going to survive?
That's important.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
that is crazy. We are a virtual organization, meaning that we are working with people all over the country and parts of Canada to provide support to Fortune 500 companies, whether that be customer service, tech support, sales support. We have all been virtual always. There's a small group of us here, some finance and myself and our office administrator and a few others, tech support. But when Dallas went on lockdown, they closed the building. That was my concern because we all have been working from homes, but now we have nobody to water the plants or get the mail. I'm like, those are important to us. We have been working on these plants for a long time and there's nobody to take care of them. So, I think every now and again, we were able to sneak up into the building. We're in a multi-tenant building and most folks had gone away. But yes, we are an organization that has been virtual for since its inception. That was my plan. That was our thought. We would jump into this and do what we are doing differently, because generally you find a lot of bricks and mortar call centers, and generally people that are coming into the call center only live within 10 or 20 miles. That's the radius you get to capture. And I thought, well, if we could capture people who are working in rural areas, people all over the country, maybe at the time there were a lot of mothers who were needing to be at home when their kids left and got home from school and needed something to do. So we've been doing this a long time. We also worked with a lot of people who were caring for elderly parents, and they could not leave the home because they needed to be with their parents. When it came, we really had nothing different to do. In fact, many of our clients who also had on-site people that were doing what we're providing for them asked if we could help take on that additional volume. So there was a lot of great new business to be had during the COVID time period. And, I think many of us in the contact center industry were able to flourish a bit because, staffing, finding people was not as easy as it used to be. But we have been serving those customers for years and years and years, and we're doing things a little differently. You hear a lot right now about AI, right? AI this, AI that. And we like to say we're IA. We have intelligent agents, intelligent people, because we still feel like there are components of business that need a human connection, and that's who we're serving. Not everything can be handled by a chat bot or, IVR or different pieces of automation. Now, certainly we want a lot of those easy tasks, those simple processes to be work shifted over to something more effective and efficient, which is automation. But now you find automation in practically every tool as a business owner that you buy, right? Everything's got an element of efficiency, automation, and even using, different voice activated scenarios with Siri and Alexa and all the others. So we are continuing to provide that human contact, that human support, most frequently for the higher touch connections as well as the more complex connections. So for example, if you are traveling and you need to exchange your ticket and you are, let's say, we're just talking about in Oslo, Norway, and you need to get to Frankfurt, Germany, and that exchange needs to happen and you're not sure what to do and the system can't quite duplicate that, you want to make sure that you have a person that you're speaking to who can get that taken care of for you. And that's who we cater to. We cater to those clients who really have a need for intelligent agents, IA. Now we use AI, but we are primarily an IA, an intelligent agent group. And we do this what we call on demand because we have everybody virtual. If, for example, you have a pharmaceutical recall and that recall comes up and you have to have 1,000 people to help respond to that recall within a couple of days, you call us. We are the folks that you call when you need to have something done very quickly and you want to make sure that it gets done right.
Right.
I won't name names, but we worked with a very large airline at the beginning of the year who's having trouble with all of the baggage that happened to get stuck in one place or the next. And we were able to clear up over 200,000 interactions in like 3 or 4 days. So, and love that airline, by the way. So, yes.
I think those are the great things you're talking about, and I love them too.
Yeah.
And we want to keep people loving them, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I love that you guys really didn't have to think too much other than who's going to pick up the mail and the plant, but for a lot of businesses, it was devastating. The lockdown was devastating. There was a McKinsey report that came out and said, the result of the lockdown was a much stronger sense of what makes business more resilient to shock, more productive, better able to deliver. And so I do think that it really accelerated a lot of the change that needed to happen. But you guys were leading the way. But here's something I really want to talk about that I think is really important, because you say, I think I may have read an article, possibly Kim, that you wrote, and you said, for a virtual contact center to be viable, there are 3 things that must be true. Number 1, a flexible network that spans the distance, safeguards operations, and protects customers. Secondly, a well-distributed skilled agents, or your intelligent agents, as you call them, led by managers who know how to engage remote workers. And then thirdly, communication to connect and operate in real time.
Right.
I want to dig into the second one here because I think you guys may have figured out some things, Kim, that could help others. Because I still think that there's organizations that are still trying to figure out how do we engage this remote workforce? Because in some regards, there's some companies that say we're not coming back, because the employees don't want to come back. Now they're used to this, right? They're used to being able to throw a load of laundry in or whatnot. But, you say skilled agents led by managers who know how to engage. How have you made it work? And do you have any hacks that you can share? How have you guys kept your people productive and engaged since 1996?
So what's crazy about all that is that I'm a fan of the in-office worker. I'm a fan personally. I love the office. I love coming in, finding out how the night went, how the day is, talk about random things, because I really like to know people. I want to know you. I don't want to just work with you. Right. So I've always been a big fan of the office, and I feel bad. We talked about our kids being 25 and 26 and upwards. I have a 25-year-old, and I'll get back to kind of how do we manage remotely and how do we do that successfully. But I have a 25-year-old who was graduating in 2020 from college, was on spring break, and then was told not to ever come back. Right. So they just basically fall off a cliff. The best part of college, for those of you who don't know, I sure do, is March to May, especially when you're a senior.
Yes.
Right. And just to leave and not have that closure or connection. And then he goes right into a job where he has never met his team on site ever. And I'm sure that they're on camera every once in a while, but he's not really met or seen or had wine or coffee or anything with his group. And I think that that's a shame. We really need a human connection. And I'm anxious to see if this all comes full circle where people want to be back together as a group. Now, it's great that I can do my laundry, and it's great that I can, pick up my kids. And you know what that all is? That's just being flexible. And as an employer, I think if you're flexible to allow teams to do this, it wouldn't be such a heartache for them to actually come into the office or be with a group, right?
Yeah,
you need to have some flexibility. The tough part as a leader is that there are some people who know how to manage that flexibility. Like, oh, I need to go to the doctor. I need to run out and do this. I need to run out and do that. But there are other people who don't. And you have to really play equal and fair with everybody. And you assume that everybody can have that balance within themselves, but many cannot. So you have to figure out, where's that fine line. But again, I am interested. I want to see what happens in the next 5 to 6 years of work. It will certainly become more automated, but do we come back and gather as a group? As for working solutions, we kind of tackle this and manage this in many different ways. At the beginning of this conversation, I said, I really want to know you, to work with you, right? I want to know about you. And I think every person on our team feels the same way. There's nobody that's kind of left out in right field, if you will, to do kind of to be on their own island. We want everybody to be a part of who we are. So there are many things that we do. We do gather as a group as often as possible. We'll do a company meeting, and then alternately a director's meeting, a manager's meeting, what we call our pros. Those are all the folks that are actually handling the interactions. We'll do luncheons all across the United States so we can get together and just have what we call a love fest, because we enjoy it. And I think that motivates people to do more if you really appreciate the people that you're working with and the work that you're doing. As for managers, there is that bit of, you have to figure out how much control you want to maintain as a manager. I think in this work environment, there are ways to understand if people are being efficient and productive, right? Everything can be measured. You can kind of see how much time people are spending on projects, but it's important. It's important that you set goals as a manager. I would like to see this, and this accomplished by the end of June. I don't care what time you take or how long it takes you. Let's just make sure we get that done. And we work with those leaders to understand the right sense of control. We don't want to micromanage. Nobody, I think, at Working Solutions micromanages
Right.
whatsoever. And that does not work in a remote environment. You have to figure out how to measure and not micromanage. Throughout this entire process of Working Solutions, I've always said, we manage the process. We don't manage the people. If we have a very finite, complete and correct process, the people will just, that part will happen, right? Because you as a company have set goals for yourself. You're striving to reach those goals. Everybody on the team knows what those goals are. So it's a lot of secret sauce in there. We try to add basically the softer element to management, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's really good sage advice.
Yeah.
I love all of that, Kim. I think that our listeners can take a lot away there. Well, I want to talk about this, and then we'll talk about something extra. But in 2020, you did take a new direction, and tell us about what you did and some of the lessons that you learned there.
So in 2020, after many, many years of not thinking that we were ready, it was in the midst of COVID. I call it my COVID project. I said, it's time to take on a financial partner. Had talked about it and thought about it for many years prior, but just thought it finally felt right. It felt like the thing to do for a lot of different reasons. There are personal reasons. As the sole supplier for your business, everything kind of flows through us from a tax perspective. And then we're ultimately financially responsible for everybody on the team. And for once in 26 years, I kind of felt like maybe I should share that responsibility a little
Right.
bit. Everything from personal guarantees. I mean, all of that for so long, it was just nice not to have to worry or deal with that. And then I also felt like, at some point, I continue as personally to grow with the business. There are things that I learn every day. It's not like I've done this before and I'm repeating it in another company. It's just like I am learning as I go.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I got to the point where exponentially I needed somebody who had been there, done that, which is why I chose Housatonic Partners to come in and kind of help at least guide me. Remember early on, I said I have a very hard time. That's why I became a CEO.
Really
that's why I founded a company. I had like a hard time taking direction.
Yeah.
But I felt like I needed somebody to tell me, yes, that's the right direction, or no, that's not the right direction. So it was definitely time. It was a great decision. I'm super happy with it. I went through, and many people don't do this, but I went through I'm calling a reverse process. Usually when you're taking on private equity, you have a what they call an investment banker who will go out and get bids from, 10, 12, 15 different companies, and you bring that in. I took a little twist on that because I always take a little twist and do things differently. That's kind of my theme. There are several that I'd been in contact with over the years, and I sent out a personal letter to each of them saying, hey, it's time. I'm ready. I would love for you to come along with me on this journey. Can you please tell me why you'd like to do that? And that's how we started the process and whittled it down and narrowed down to Housatonic Partners. But
yeah,
it was very different, but I am thrilled that I did things differently.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things, Kim, that really stuck out to me because you said you knew this PE firm for years. I mean, maybe 10 plus years they'd been reaching out to you. And the timing was not right. So one lesson is patience pays off. On their part, just keeping that relationship because you know what, that is a lesson that whether you're trying to acquire a new client, whatever the case may be, but it's like staying in front of that, they stayed in front of you and
they did.
They kept, themselves top of mind for you. So that is one thing. And then I love the whole concept of working backwards because I know you told me, when they come in, they can advise you and say, you want the maximum value for your business, right? And so they can help you kind of identify the gaps and then you can work backwards from there. Okay, here's something that we need to work on. So there was a lot of leadership lessons in there for me that hopefully will help someone else. And Literally, I could talk to you for a few more hours here, Kim, but we're not going to do that to our listeners. But I am going to just say one more thing before we move on to something extra, and something that you wrote, and it completely resonates with me and speaks to me. Talking about women in business. And you said, women should not compete with one another. They empower one another. And I am such a believer in that too. And I think so oftentimes we think we have to compete because, especially in the executive suite, there's not as many spots, right? So a lot of times women think, oh, I have to push you down so that I can rise higher. And I just, for my own life and my own personal and professional journey, I have just found empowering one another and helping other women along the way, it's going to come back to you in spades. It does. And we don't have to compete, but we can collaborate and celebrate and empower one another.
I agree. I don't think that happens enough. And it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy because as competitive people, we were all generally, founders are very competitive people. That's why we're in the business. You want to do better and go bigger. And a lot of times people think the way to do that is to lessen your opponent, right? And that's not the case, because I think a rising tide sails all ships. And I think that if we can be there for each other, I think working for a women CEO, I don't know. I stumble on this because I don't want to say, men are this and women are this. I don't want to categorize, but I do know that we all handle things much differently as individuals.
Right.
And I think just as a human race, we'd all be in a much better place if we lifted each other up instead of pushing each other down. We all could do great things.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, Kim, tell me, what do you believe is the something extra that every leader needs?
Well, when you gave me this, it's funny because we've spent a lot of time talking about it today. And I really think the something extra is compassion. And I really think, in addition to the extra plus, is the ability to listen. If we listen more and maybe talk a little less, we'll be in really great place. I once had a team member put something on my desk, and it was very, I haven't forgotten it. He said, it was something to the fact that, the friendly CEO, and how they damage their business. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I think I'm like who I am, and I like being my true self, both at work and outside of work.
Yeah.
And I think that all plays into compassion for each other and listening to what each other has to say and being flexible within that realm. So
good.
I would say that's what I hope to bring to the team. For sure.
I love it. Well, obviously you are, because you guys are just doing amazing things, Kim. So listen, this has been such a delight for me. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are, but it has been a delight for me to have you on the show. And I absolutely 100% know that your story and your sage advice is going to be so helpful to our listeners. So thank you so much for giving back in that way.
I had a great time. Thank you so much, Lisa. 2 peas in a pod, I think we got going on here, but yes, thank you very much for your time, and thanks to your listeners as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Something Extra with Lisa Nichols is a Technology Partners production. Copyright Technology Partners, Inc. 2019. For show notes or to reach Lisa, visit tpi.co/podcast. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you listen.